You know him, you love him, your grandmother has a surprising number of figures of him. They are elephants. But what if we can use their real-life traits to improve our monster setting and character designs in D&D? Well, today we'll be using a National Geographic documentary to do just that.
They've roamed our planet for 6 million years.
So a lot of monsters get the same treatment. It's old, blah, blah, blah. The thing is, it's a really cliche documentary open and a cliched monster entry. Being old only matters in a setting where you take the time to explain being old is rare. For example, if I made a D&D setting where a handful of new species are introduced to the world once a century, often dying out over the course of the next 3 centuries, and that's when they normally go extinct, becoming a 600-year-old species means something. So just don't call stuff old unless being old is going to matter, which it does not here.
We begin to see just how much like us elephants really are.
I've watched this full documentary. I do not believe this promise has been met. So let me warn you about a process called overselling. I see it quite a bit in D&D. Sometimes in an effort to explain D&D, it gets described as way better than it really is because you're trying to hype them up for it. And this can result in disappointment, and you have to be careful about doing this by mistake.
For African elephants, nothing matters more than family.
It gets glossed over a lot, but it's worth thinking about how different groups in your game might treat family concepts. Goblins, I imagine, don't take it too seriously by default, but orcs might. I could definitely see an orc taking the role of making sure his spawn can continue the will of Grumsh very seriously, while goblins tend to be a bit more selfish in nature, so they might leave their young just around, and they kind of have to pick up on traits on their own.
And here on the savannah, they live in the biggest groups of all.
I took this bit because we get a nice wide shot of a herd. I counted about 20 here, and I think around a third of those are children. It's a nice reference for monsters. I picture this as around the size of most social monster dens.
Around him, a tight-knit network of aunts, cousins, and sisters.
So that line made me Google if elephants inbreed. The answer is no. Most animals have one sex dispersed from their group at a certain age, apparently. A good example is lions, where males will go out to conquer or found a new pride whenever they hit lion puberty. So they just roam on out and no longer chill with their home and birthplace. What does this mean for D&D? Well, we can apply it to the monsters of random encounters. See, these are probably looking for a new lair, while layered monsters are much more family-like. So if we apply this to goblins, though it would probably make sense for more beast-like monsters, an encounter with a goblin is going to be either at home, a raid, or in the case of a random encounter, it might be a goblin male or group of men looking for another tribe. This can help add an extra layer to random encounters.
A brutal dry season has taken hold in Zimbabwe. She knows of a water source, but to get there, they'll have to take a perilous path.
I'm pretty sure this drought is being upplayed for the documentary, but if you ever want a fairly short-term campaign, this could make a nice objective. You're just traveling to the nearest water source, some themed random encounters, a few planned spots, then have the party hopefully grow to like their traveling group so you have something to threaten with the monster encounters, and then tie it off neatly at the end with you get to the watering hole and you avoid dehydration. I can hear the opening narration now. Your town has been dying. Drought has driven out the residents. You are the last group to leave, and you know the town will be taken over by kobolds once you're gone. The final departure is made up of 3 or 4 families, totaling just over 20 people. 7 of them are children, and 4 of them are you. If you can just stay safe for the trek, about a week, y'all can make it to the river of Utu, where you can drink before making your way to one of the many villages along its shore.
To get to that water, they've got to get down this cliff.
Let's mark this as an obstacle for the aforementioned campaign.
They reach out with their trunks and they roll it up into a little fist and touch the ground in front, and then place their foot exactly where their trunk went. There's a way to test the ground. Really surprising for me. I've never seen that before.
Hold up, you've never seen that before? I cut it because it's not needed for this video, but this lady has allegedly worked with elephants for 30 years and has apparently never seen a rather intuitive way of checking the ground. As for D&D, remember to buy your 10-foot pole to check the ground ahead of you. It's really helpful. I mean that unironically. You can also get a mirror to check around corners. You'd think it's not that useful, but if you're remembering it, it's normally pretty handy, and even if it isn't, they're pretty cheap items.
His mother relied on the wisdom of savanna elephants who've gone before her.
So what they're talking about is the parents teaching children survival techniques and those techniques going down generations. But may I pitch to you spirit elephants? Just ghost elephants. Sounds like a fun encounter. We can plop that into the campaign pitch from earlier. We travel for water and find the souls of elephants that died of thirst. Then they try to steal the water, and we either have to give it to them, risk dehydration, battle, run, standard D&D procedure.
But like all males, when he reaches adolescence, he'll leave the family.
Guess I didn't need to Google that earlier. Way to ruin my search history.
The abundance of food and space allows their extended families to roam together.
Lots of food does this with a lot of animals in the world. The biggest one I can recall was a bear documentary where a river with a bunch of salmon had like 30 bears, when normally only a few exist in the same area because they're a territorial bunch. Basically, lots of food. I can tolerate your presence for that food. This is a big deal when you're worried about monsters, so humans in a fantasy setting kind of have to decide how much food they need available compared to how much they want to risk a monster attack. Like deserts, for example, are probably one of the safest spaces in a fantasy setting. There's not a lot of monsters going on normally. But bays and other rich life areas such as jungles kinda suck because now there's a lot of food and there's a lot more monsters.
For the last 48 years, Dr. Joyce...
Cool, that's 18 years over the other one. Have you seen them check the ground before walking through areas?
Learning their language.
I sometimes wonder what the races of D&D learning each other's languages for the first time must have been like. Like, in particular, if you want to learn a monster language, it must be a massive pain, and this lady doesn't even seem to fully understand elephant communication despite these decades. I remember in the Drizzt novels, I don't remember exactly how he learned it, but he learned the basics from kind of eavesdropping, and then I believe he became fluent in communication with a ranger fellow. That is an unpleasant noise. Let me clip that and play it for you again. This is what the ghost elephants do. You hear this and they steal your water, and everyone is terrified of them because they just make that screech. If you use Shatter, put that noise on your phone, and the next time you cast Shatter, play it at the table and watch as your entire party gets upset at you for that horrible screech.
All of their rumbles contain components that is below the level of human hearing.
So right here, he's saying that they can speak in tones lower than humans can understand, and that's a fun concept. Couldn't make that a racial trait or a monster trait. Kind of hard to make it clear to the players, though, if you want secret communication. But if you just want a dungeon to know about the party and the presence of the party, it works great.
Elephants can hear these powerful rumbles from miles away.
Citation needed. Well, I guess it's the documentary, so it is what someone might be citing. But miles away sounds a bit unlikely, right? Wikipedia does seem to agree with them. I don't buy it. But you don't need to buy it for D&D, so here's what I think. On top of towers, we get some unique fantasy thing with big ears, and Wikipedia says that it can communicate up to 6 miles, so let's build another tower every 6 miles or so. This can be a long-distance communication method. Maybe one or two of these creatures could die, and the party could be put in charge of transporting a new one of these creatures, and that way we can incorporate a little extra world building into a small little quest. And it does establish large-scale communication. Decide if that's necessary for your campaign or might hurt your campaign to a certain degree.
What was once pristine savanna is now human settlement and farmland. Elephants that trespass run the risk of conflict with people.
They present it like it's a bad thing, but personally, I like humans quite a bit and would like them to have plenty of farmland to keep eating. This does make the interesting point that they might be stealing from farmland, which is just a straightforward kill quest, like literally. A farmer is barely able to feed his family, and some behemoth keeps coming in and ruining his harvest. Heck, I don't even have to swap it with a monster. We already have the elephant stat block. It's CR4. Is with endangered species, but it's a fictional game. I think this is a fair and straightforward kill quest that kinda could exist within reality. I watched this clip of them fighting, and for some reason, I was imagining pocket sand. just spit forth from their trunks, and it's just a cone of sand that blinds your enemies.
Jaziri is much younger than any of these bulls, but he wants to be in their gang.
This can act as a monster motivation. A weaker monster starts attacking people to try and get in with the cooler monsters. I'm going to apply this to goblins again, though it would probably make more sense among orcs, hobgoblins, or some other species, I'm not sure.
And that's why so many have been killed by ivory poachers.
I had a character that poached ivory once, actually. In his backstory, that was admittedly a touch longer than it should have been. I like my backstory short. He was basically a pirate. He hunted ivory along the shore until his ship crashed. Everyone else died. He was lucky enough to get the kindness of a druid who managed to convert him into a Tempest Domain cleric soon after. Very fun character. Lil stupid. It was like a 7 intelligence, which isn't that stupid, but it's a bit dull. Now you might wonder, if he was saved by a druid, why didn't you use a nature cleric? That's a good question. Moving on.
One of the most amazing things that you see with the super tuskers is that they're surrounded by this group of other large bulls. The local people around here call them their bodyguards.
See what I'm talking about? This is a very straightforward kill quest. Now we have a minion set 2, and if you want to break up the stat block so we're not using one stat block all the way through, we also have the mammoth stat block, which you can flavor as an elephant really easily. It's CR 6, so this will be level 5 or 6 side quest. Maybe we make a quick child version of the stat block. Earlier I got a count of around 20, so let's say they recently fought a village which wants you to finish the job against the elephants. So what's left is around 6 children, and let's say the children are challenge rating 1. There's 4 adult elephants and a big one that uses the mammoth stat block. So the process of this quest is basically you need to break them up so you can fight them into smaller groups, and that could be a very fun quest. Nice, short, and easy.
Oh my god, he's gonna bring down the whole tree.
Okay, maybe I shuffle the hook and the quest from what I was talking about. We start with the drought journey. At the end, you make it to a village. In the village, there is a sacred and dying tree because elephants screwed with it. Quest 1, make it to the village and not die of thirst. Quest 2, kill the elephants. Quest 3, go to some temple to get the means of healing the sacred tree. Now you have an inn with the church for more quests. I like the adventure flow. It feels fairly organic, and having dealt with the ghost elephants, we even have like a kind of degree of experience we can cite for chasing the regular elephants. And that's why you got that job. Or you can swap all of this with any monster variety, but you get the idea. This is a fun quest set.
She is matriarch to her very own herd of buffaloes.
So this is fun. The elephant was orphaned and just took over a group of buffalo. Imagine trolls or orcs might do this sometimes to goblins, but you could attach any big monster with an unusual following. As an example, maybe a yeti was part of a circus before escaping and taking over a group of kobolds. I actually did once have a yeti break a bunch of monkeys out of a circus, and they acted as his kind of goons. It was actually a very fun encounter.
But unlike buffaloes, elephants like to eat on the move. So for 16 hours a day, they must follow as she browses.
Touch tyrannical. So we could set up some conflict that could emerge between the new layer and the underlings just from a difference in perspective of how you survive, kind of like this right here. Okay, that's an actual tyrannical leader. Consider if these kobolds from the Yeti example could be convinced to turn on their jerk of a leader. Of course, that wouldn't be one conversation. You would probably need to do some stuff for them. Could make a fun set of quests to take out the Yeti without doing a full dungeon crawl.
This very special herd is made up entirely of toddlers.
Herds made entirely from children. May I suggest to you this iCard in another tab?
Up to 25 young elephants are taken in at the Ratetti Sanctuary each year.
Oh, it's not a natural herd. I'm a little disappointed. There goes wherever I was going with that.
Hyenas found him trapped in a well and left him with a life-changing injury.
You might think I'm about to say something about crippled monsters, but you would be wrong. If you ever want to establish a group of monsters as cruel, crippling someone is a very effective way to do that.
But within one generation, 60% of savanna elephants.
And that is how fast we could theoretically lower a monster population if money were put behind it. Could make for some extreme survival of the fittest stuff, though, because we can run evolution at speed running levels in fantasy. Picture everyone hunts troll for a little while, And then the later years, as the trolls get rare, they get deadlier because only the toughest survive. There's a palpable cognitive dissonance when I'm thinking about monsters and the show is thinking about conservation efforts. Check out this video if you want. I hope you got some inspiration from this, and thank you for your time.